Right, time now to have a look at the stories making the headlines in media across the world. And we are going to begin with Brexit. Let's get it from the perspective of the Daily Telegraph, a Brexit newspaper, you might say. The front page headline speculating May will sign a deal today. Looks like they got that much right, doesn't it? Very likely now, confirmation that Theresa May is going to meet the European Commission Chief Jean-Claude Juncker at 6 GMT. We are almost there, in fact. The front page of Arab News is, not surprisingly, leading with the Palestinian anger erupting over the Jerusalem embassy move. The article says that residents shuttered schools and shops early on Thursday to begin what's being described as 3 days of rage. As for the digital front page of the Jerusalem Post, well, it's got a multimedia piece looking ahead at the pending UN Security Council meeting. That's later in the day, in fact, and the future of the Middle East peace plan itself. If we have a look at the Californian wildfires through the lens of the Independent, that is quite a picture, isn't it? It's reporting that more than 200,000 people have been evacuated, with gusting winds fanning the flames across Southern California. NASA, in fact, has captured some pretty remarkable photos as well of the fire from space. Onto the business pages of Gulf News. Another day, another record for cryptocurrency Bitcoin as it surpassed $16,000. Bounces up and down a lot, I have to say, and has dropped 12% in the course of today. People are saying, is this a bubble? Others are saying, well, no, it isn't. We'll get a bit more on that. Finally, staying with Bitcoin, Bloomberg takes a very interesting view here on electricity consumption that digital currencies like Bitcoin actually absorb. Giant farms of servers are needed to handle the massive transactions. Has the environmental footprint for Bitcoin been overblown, though? Right. Let's begin, because with me is Cornelia Meyer, CEO of business consultancy MRL Corporation. Now, you've been writing throughout the week about Brexit, Cornelia. It's all coming to one would hope, a satisfactory head. We'll find out in due course. The Daily Telegraph were pretty confident there's a deal being done. And
they seem to be spot on, because they said Theresa May would meet this morning with Jean-Claude Juncker. And when I read this, actually on the way in, I thought, wow, they're confident, but they seem to be spot on.
It's interesting, isn't it, because we've had talks going through the night, but we also knew yesterday that Donald Tusk, as President of the European Council, would also have something to say at a similar sort of time frame. So, interesting choreography.
And what was very interesting is that Barnier had given them until tonight to finalise, and then he had extended until yesterday, until
Barnier,
Sunday.
Mr. Brexit for the Commission.
Mr. Brexit for the Commission had extended until Sunday, so that made me feel, oh, they might be further away. But, you know, we need to come to a conclusion. We need to get this resolved, because for our economy here in Britain, these trade talks are absolutely crucial, and business doesn't have much time to wait, and as to do they keep people and operations here, or do they relocate them?
It does tell you something, doesn't it? This is just about sufficient progress in order to start trade negotiations. Heaven knows how complex and bitter they might become over the course of the months ahead. But talking about bitterness, let's have a focus on the Arab News and indeed the Jerusalem Post. We should get both sides of this issue. Donald Trump, of course, recognising Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and in fact, the picture on the front page of the Arab News sort of tells the story, doesn't it?
No, well, I mean, it's a tale of two stories, and I have to fess up. I have a regular column in Arab News, so I have to sort of be open and transparent about that. You know, the Arab News says, you know, the court of the King of Saudi Arabia has warned about the irresponsible and unwarranted step. If you look at it, it violates no less than 8 UN Security Council resolutions from 1967 until now. So it's from the Palestinian side, from the Arab side, a very, very dire move. For the Israelis, they say, well, look, it just expects the status quo because we have our government here. So this is what it's not going to do much for peace talks.
No, well, no, and interestingly, the Jerusalem Post doesn't shy away from that either. Obviously, they've got a different perspective on the story, but I noticed in the explanation as to where we are, almost the last line is to say there's little indication of tangible progress. So they're not taking a view that this is the first big step towards some sort of wonderful overall universal settlement. Certainly not.
If something is totally unacceptable to one side, don't expect them to come to the table. And that's, you know, Vice President Pence is going to the region soon. And he will probably not be met by the Palestinian leadership.
And it is sort of battened down the hatches a bit, isn't it, in terms of what we're hearing about Israeli battalions being put out on patrol and what have you.
Yeah, it's inflaming the situation, and you know, the Middle East is already inflamed enough.
Well, you keep using words that move us on to the next story, which is very neat of you. Wildfires getting all the way towards Los Angeles now, and again, just got to show you the picture on The Independent, because it is a stunning image. It's odd, isn't it, how things of huge terror are also things of great natural beauty. I mean, it's an extraordinary picture.
Yeah, but you know, it's the first time I think that wildfires made it into Bel Air, the most affluent area of Los Angeles, and they're very close to the Getty Museum, which has priceless art. So it's really quite something, you know. The environment is not playing ball. Clearly, climate change.
No, but interestingly, it played ball in one point. I saw the Los Angeles mayor saying, we were promised erratic weather. Luckily, the erratic weather was erratic in a good way. But it just shows they're completely at the fortune of the elements.
At nature's mercy. She will always win.
She will, well, yes, and let's hope not when it comes to Los Angeles. Now, let's move on to the business page here of the Gulf News. Another day, another record is the headline. Yes, we're talking Bitcoin again, going over $16,000. Just before we focus on that, worth pointing out, it's dropped 12% on the day, but it's still up like 50% on the week or something. So it does do a lot of this, we know that.
Everybody complains that markets are not volatile enough. Well, here we have volatility. But it's very interesting. You know, Holland, tulips, and the 1600s come to mind. You know, the first ever real economic bubble. It's quite, when things get that volatile and grow that fast, it's probably a sign that the bubble is about to burst. But what really worries me about Bitcoin is it's not regulated. You know, usually with money you have a central bank that regulates things, and it's used in things like the dark web. It's used, you know, to avoid taxes. It's used to push money into countries that are under sanctions. And I ask myself, for an investor, do you really want to be in something like that?
But you know what worries me, and I don't understand it anywhere near the way you do, is that we're talking about $16,000 here, and they are quoting Harish Gupta, chief crypto economist at Blockchain Capital Management, so one gets an idea as to where he's coming from, saying, forget $16,000, our price target is $200,000. And I wouldn't be the only one here sitting there thinking, hang on a minute, 200,000, it's still only 16.
Yeah, well,
what am I doing with my cash?
We'll see where it goes, and at some stage, I'm sure somebody will say, "Well, look, we've got to regulate this stuff," and that will probably put a little bit of reason into the whole bubble.
Well, here's another good sideline on the Bitcoin revolution, if I can call it that, and that is the amount of energy it takes to generate a transaction, because this is such complex stuff. But Bloomberg have taken a view on this, on the environmental cost, as it's been discussed, of Bitcoin, but whether that's actually a fair thing, a fair way of looking at it. But it is extraordinary, how complex
I mean, what
this
they
is.
say here, it uses about an eighth of what all the data centers in the US use, or 0.21% of the whole total US electricity consumption. That's quite a lot.
But if we compare it to what you get in regular transactions, I mean, they use it too, don't they? Everyone's
they
doing
use it too, and we're flying around the world, and you know, this is the 21st century life is high in energy.
Yeah. Well, oh look, we're going to stop there, Cornelia. Thank you so much for that. But look, you'll be interested in this.